All right. Let me move my chair out of the way. Okay, we're going to be talking about the production possibilities frontier. I wrote this. I need to check and see if it actually is showing up here. It is. Okay, production possibilities frontier. It used to be called the production possibilities curve. So now it's PPF, and it used to be PPC, and sometimes I'll say PPC, and I mean PPF, and this just works out this way that it was in the textbooks forever as production possibilities curve. Someone wrote a textbook, they wanted to sound original, so they said frontier, and everybody liked it. So most of the textbooks since then have been PPF for frontier instead of PPC, but I'll use both terms because I was trained a long time ago, and that rolls off my tongue a little easier. So, let's see. This is a model. We've already discussed the circular flow. This is another model, and this one really helps us understand the supply of problems and choices that must be made. So what we do is we imagine an economy, and I don't know how low I can draw that without it going off the, no, it's still good. All right. Okay. Imagine an economy with only two goods, and that's just so that we can so we can do it on two-dimensional board. So the classic situation is what they call the guns versus butter trade-offs. And that way we can kind of think of this as military goods versus civilian goods. And bring in more products onto a two-dimensional board. But because guns are politically incorrect, a lot of the textbooks now have robots versus pizza or something. But I want you to know the terminology because probably your bosses are going to know the old way things were done, and it makes you sound really smart if you can go, oh yes, that's the old guns versus butter trade-off. And then they'll go, oh, you know about that. But if you say, that's the old robots versus pizza, they're just gonna look at you funny. So I want you to do well. And also the whole story about what happened with World War II and the Great Depression before that, that's important because it helps us understand what happened. Basically, we don't have enough resources to produce everything we want. We have to make choices. And so there's going to be some amount, and I need to get out of the way of the camera here, there's going to be some amount of guns that you could produce if the amount of butter on this axis was 0. So there's going to be some amount there. And we don't really even need numbers, we just want to understand how this works. And there's going to be some amount of butter that can be produced. Let's say it's over here. That could be produced, this point, could be produced if we produce no guns. And there will be a trade-off. And we're going to find that in real life, it's a curve, a bowed curve, as you see. Outwardly bowed. And I can explain that pretty soon, but let me get started on everything else. But what we find is, if you want to produce butter, you're going to have to give up some guns. So let's say we want to produce this much butter. Okay, so instead of all that butter, we had 0 over here when we had this much guns, right? But we want to produce this much consumer goods. Well, in order to do that, you're going to have to give up some guns, because we don't have enough resources to produce both the guns and the butter. We have to have trade-offs. We have to make choices. Okay? I know in this semester that I'm filming this that I did the let's put a medevac helicopter on every street corner, and you could see how ridiculous that was. And if we did that, we could only do that probably. We would have to give up a lot of things to do that, right? So if you're seeing this in a later semester, I may use a different example. But this semester, I know, we did the medevac helicopter example. So you have to give up some of these guns in order to have some production in butter. And that implies that beyond this curve, which is the PPF, or the PPC, beyond that point are points we just can't reach. We can't reach these points. And that would include the one I was talking about. If you produced all the guns and all the same amount of, say, well, we want to keep all these guns and we want to produce all the butter. Well, you can't. Not at this time. This thing is a snapshot, a photograph in time. If I was telling you that, if I was going to tell you that this represents the, let's say, 1939 PPF for the United States, the one in 2017 or 2018 would be humongously, it would be out past the edge of the picture, probably past the roof of this building. I'm on the top floor, and we would find that over time the PPF has moved out, and it's way out there, many times more. We can produce more stuff. Okay? But at the time we're looking at, in that snapshot in time, we're stuck with this PPF, and this is the utmost edge if we're extremely efficient. In fact, we could write that word efficient. Let me use a different color. A point on this, the corners included, any of these points, we would say that they are efficient. Okay? They are efficient if they're on the curve. Well, let me write it all out so you get it in your notes. Efficient. Okay, so this curve is, as I drew it, is efficient. All right? If we're producing somewhere inside, like if we were producing here, we would be producing this much guns and this much butter, and this would be inefficient, as in we're wasting resources somehow. Oof, that does not look right. There. Two F's. Okay, can you read that? Try again. All right, now, we also would call that unemployment because there's resources not being employed. Unemployment. And we would also say that one of these points out here is impossible at this point in time. So it's impossible now. Okay? 50 years later, we should probably be able to produce those points. So it's messy. But I want you to understand that there is this trade-off going on, and we have to make choices. It's just amazing how I hear so many people saying, well, we just need to do more of this, do more of that, do more of this. And it's like, wait, we may not have the resources for that. We're going to have to choose. Okay? So, these could be test questions. I could see this. I would probably have some points. I could see this. Let's see. A, B, put one here, C. Oh, I need to put the point right there, right? D, and we'll call this one E. Okay? What points are impossible? Oops, I don't want to give that away. Right. A, right? What points are efficient? This one is on this corner one is on the PPC, or see, I said PPC, PPF. This one here is on the PPF, and this one here is on the PPF. So B, C, and D would be efficient. Okay? Which one it represents unemployment or is inefficient? E. Okay? Also, efficient also means full employment. So, full employment would be, I'm going to get rid of the word efficient here. Full employment is also another term for being on the PPF. So in other words, this is the most we can produce, and we're going to have to make choices if we want to have more of one thing than something else. Now let's get back to where we were in the 1930s. So we have one of these. '30s. We weren't here. We were producing more butter, not a lot of guns, and we were having unemployment, so we were probably somewhere like here, because that was the Great Depression. Okay? So, we were doing something like this. Not a lot of military stuff. We had a very small military. And so, not a lot of guns, plenty of butter. But we were definitely not at a point where we had to make choices yet, because we could go any direction and produce more of both if we wanted, until we get here. So we were in the Depression, so when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, what happened? I'm waiting for somebody to say. Doesn't work this way, does it? You can't answer. I'm used to asking you. So, what happens? At first, the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor, and we joined the war on two fronts. and we joined the war in Europe and the Pacific. So at first we can produce more guns and we don't have to produce less consumer goods. But eventually they had to ration. I had my grandmother was told that the lipstick she had just bought was the last one they were going to get in at the local drugstore, because the lipstick factory was going to switch over from producing lipstick to producing gun cartridges. Same thing, metal tubes, right? And so she decided to hide her new lipstick because she thought, you know, one of my friends might come over and they're going to be rare and I don't want to not have a lipstick. So she hid it so well, she didn't find it until 1954, which was 8 or 9 years after the war was over. So anyway, she hid it too well. But why did she hide it? It was the last one. It was one of the last ones ever made before when the war was starting up, because they were going to switch from producing. Apparently, at that point in time, they were up to here or up to here, right? So let's say they were here. They were going to produce more guns, and the only way they could do that was by moving along this way, and that meant less lipstick, basically. Less consumer goods. You got it? Okay. Also, they decided not to make ladies' silk stockings anymore.